The trees are in their autumn beauty, the woodland paths are dry. Under the October twilight, the water mirrors a still sky. William Butler Yeats wrote one of his most famous poems in 1916, namely The Wild Swans at Coole. Coole Park lies in the centre of Ireland. At the end of the 19th century, the park, marked by its lakes and extensive woodlands, belonged to Lady Gregory and her family. She was born in Ireland in 1852, into a family of the upper class. In her youth, she wrote poems and letters and developed an interest in Irish nationalism. She is primarily remembered for her work behind the Irish Literary Revival, as well as the Irish National Theatre Society. This was a group of talented Irish poets, musicians and artists who advocated for an independent Ireland. Her home at Coole Park served as an important meeting place for leading revival figures. In this company, Lady Gregory met a poet who shared her passion for Irish nationalism and Irish literature, a poet who would later be considered one of the greatest poets of the 20th century, a poet whose literature is still widely read today across the English-speaking world. This fascinating character was William Butler Yeats. In the following decades, Yeats visited Coole often. The beauty of the natural Irish scenery left a powerful impression on Yeats that heavily influenced his poetry. To him, Coole was a symbol of a strong and independent Ireland. He spent his time there unwinding and writing poetry, as well as sharing his ideas of a liberated Ireland. The poem The Wild Swans at Coole displays Yeats' love for the Irish countryside. Yeats is spending an October evening at Coole Park, looking over a lake full of swans. He has been there many times before, and though he has aged in that time, the swans are as elegant as ever. The theme of time and aging preoccupies Yeats, and he fears the uncertainty surrounding death. Perhaps it might be interesting to add that Yeats was 51 years old at the time of writing, and passed away 22 years later at the relatively old age of 73. Another theme to consider is nature versus humanity. Pay attention to how Yeats portrays himself in the beauty surrounding him. Also note that in 1916, the First World War was still waging in Europe, and Ireland was struggling to gain independence. Now that you have a general understanding of the poem's underlying ideas, no need to keep you in suspense any longer. This is The Wild Swans at Coole by William Butler Yeats.
The trees are in their autumn beauty, the woodland paths are dry. Under the October twilight, the water mirrors a still sky. Upon the brimming water among the stones are 59 swans. The 19th autumn has come upon me since I first made my count. I saw, before I had well finished, all suddenly mount, and scatter wheeling in great broken rings upon their clamorous wings. I have looked upon those brilliant creatures, and now my heart is sore. All's changed since I, hearing at twilight, the first time on this shore, the bell beat of their wings above my head, trod with a lighter tread. Unwearied still, lover by lover, they paddle in the cold, companionable streams or climb the air. Their hearts have not grown old. Passion or conquest, wander where they will, attend upon them still. But now they drift on the still water, mysterious, beautiful. Among what rushes will they build? By what lake's edge or pool? Delight men's eyes when I awake some day to find they have flown away.
Autumn and twilight. Both are similar in the sense that they are a transition in the passage of time. Autumn is the change from summer to winter. For twilight, it is from day to night. For Yeats, this symbolized the point in his life where he had to accept his fate of growing old, but not yet dying. At 51 years of age, his summer, spring, and day are over. This beauty of autumn is also conveyed through the plosive T and D sounds in the first 3 lines. The use of the word mirrors hints towards the reflective mindset of Yeats, where he reflects on his youth and compares it to his older self. The overall imagery produced by autumn is reflected in the color of twilight, all of which is also mirrored in the Coole. This unity of nature showcases how Yeats is out of place in this setting. His humanity does not fit into nature. The still sky shows this standstill Yeats reached in his life, a sort of stasis that his life is reached once his eventful youth is ended. This is enhanced by the alliteration of the letter S in still sky. The consonant of M in the brimming water shows the abundance of it in the lake, to a point where it is on the brink of overflowing. This abundance of water in nature juxtaposes the dry woodland path, which may also be a metaphor for Yeats' life. The path of his life has dried up and is devoid of life, whereas in nature the water is still plentiful, and with it is life. This juxtaposition adds to the overall theme of nature versus humanity. Following the enjambment of line 5 and 6, one of the more important symbols is introduced, the swans, 59 of them, to be exact. The enjambment which the swans follow highlights their graceful nature. Knowing that exactly 59 swans were counted shows the attention given by Yeats to these creatures. The number itself is also interesting. Swans are known to stick with their partners for life. If there's an odd amount of swans available, then there would be 29 pairs with one leftover lone swan. One might look at this lonesome swan and see Yeats' unrequited love for Maud Gonne, and then eventually also for her daughter. ABCBDD is the rhyme scheme of this poem. The steady and gentle flow created by this mirrors the gracefulness of the swans. However, in the first stanza, stones and swans don't really rhyme. They make a slant rhyme. This separation from the rest of the poem can also be seen as another form of nature going against humanity, where the swans don't conform to the human idea of rhyming. These themes of reflecting on your youth whilst growing old and comparing yourself to nature set the melancholic tone of this poem.
The second stanza begins with an irregular line that has an enjambment at the end, unlike the opening lines of the other stanzas. Burdensome irregularity, in combination with a high concentration of consonants, makes the line uncomfortable. This connotes the theme of aging and the semantic of transition, as the line states 19 years already have gone by. Yeats is affected by the dimension of time, unlike the swans, that seem to have remained unscathed and pure. Count in the next line relates to the semantic field of futility in human efforts to contain nature by quantifying it. The word count rhyming with mount. Mount refers to the swans flying away, which makes counting them impossible. The impossibility of counting is highlighted within the caesura that generates a moment of tension after the third line. Counting swans is juxtaposed with the quantification of his age, that is, Yeats's age. In lines 10 to 12, Yeats presents the swans also using enjambments. The fast pace of these lines mirrors the swan's powerful movement, which matches the imagery of great broken rings and is in contrast to his futile counting. The broken rings relate to the semantic of unrequited love, as the ring is broken due to there being an odd number of birds, as Aslan already alluded. A possible metaphor for Yeats's romantic failure in regards to Maud Gonne and her daughter, as the ring needs an additional bird to be mended. Alternatively, the odd number of birds producing the broken ring could refer to the lost lovers of World War I, which also impacted Ireland. The rhyming couplet expressing a linkage between the auditory and visual imagery the birds produce. Clamorous rings caused by their wings. Clamorous wings alternatively could be in contrast to the sound of the guns of the Western Front of World War I, that is associated with the theme of nature versus humanity. In the third stanza, or sestet, Yeats employs clever diction by utilizing the adjective brilliant in combination with the creatures, and thereby cements their mystic powers already within the first line. Next, his sore heart relates to the semantic field of unrequited love, or collective heartbreak caused by World War I, alternatively, as it is symbolized by the 59 swans mentioned by Aslan and the broken rings. Yeats hears at twilight, meaning that he hears the clamorous wings at twilight. This fusion of the wings, as well as the twilight, is holistic. This results in a connection being formed between the first stanza's description of nature and the swans. Further semantics of reflection occur in the next line. Yeats mentions how all has changed in his life, which can be juxtaposed to the perfect mirror of the lake being the same since the first time he had been at the shore. The bell beat describes the sound of the flying swans. The alliteration gives a rhythmic and regular sound, mimicking the strength of the swans. The white color of the swans relates to the purity of nature and auditory imagery of bells, which could be of a church, connoting a coming death, where the church indicates mourning, as Yeats was a Christian. Head being in the rhyming couplet, with tread possibly linking his manner of walking to the gravity of nature that he reflects upon. Yeats trods with a lighter tread at the end of this stanza, trod and tread being alliterations of one another, representing a regularity and the power of nature that humbles Yeats.
Now moving on to the fourth stanza. The fourth stanza is devoted entirely to the swans. Yeats personifies the swans, giving them human emotions, more specifically, emotions that contrast his own. The swans are described as unwearied still. Unwearied meaning full of life, and still alludes to the time span in which Yeats has been coming to Coole Park. For 19 years, Yeats has been returning to the lake and watches the swans. While they have maintained their spirit, Yeats himself has developed contrarily. He's become tired and resigned. Lover by lover indicates that the swans swim in twos. Yeats projects human relationships onto the swans. This expression is a diacope, so a repetition of a word with an intervening word in between. The repetition not only highlights the notion of the swans being in a couple, but the liquid sounds make the phrase more pleasant. Yeats yearns for a charming relationship like he sees it at the lake. Additionally, Yeats has used a comma between still and lover. This caesura creates the atmosphere of the lovers being in their own little world. Like before, when referring to the swans, Yeats uses enjambment to stress the elegance of their movement. There is consonance in the words cold, companionable, and climb. The repetition of the plosive sounds draw attention to the permanence of nature. Also, companionable streams is a pathetic fallacy. This shows the deep connection Yeats has to the nature surrounding him. In Coole Park, looking over the swans, he feels at home. In the next line, their hearts have not grown old, Yeats clearly shows what symbolism he attributes to the swans. They are a symbol of stability. Meanwhile, their hearts implies that Yeats does not share their feelings. In contrast to the swans, his heart has grown old. Around 20 years prior, Yeats had proposed to Maud Gonne, an Irish actress, 4 times and had been rejected every time. Now, faced with the uncertainty of death, Yeats has resigned his pursuit for Maud Gonne. In the following line, the swans are given more human-like feelings, namely passion or conquest. These connote youth and lightheartedness. Again, this juxtaposes how Yeats feels himself. He feels old and mournful. The swans wander where they will. The alliteration using the letter W conjures an image of movement, evoking the sense of the swan's freedom. An alternative interpretation is also possible when focusing on the choice of vocabulary. Wander implies movement without a fixed aim, maybe even straying away from the group. In that sense, Yeats may be projecting his own feelings of solitude onto the swans. The final line, attend upon them still, is still referring to the understanding that the swans are filled with passion and conquest. The final word of the stanza, still, is a repetition of still in the first line. Again, Yeats is highlighting the symbol of stability that he has given to the swans.
The drifting swans suggests their carefree nature. They do not have to worry about their place in nature. This contrasts Yeats, who is unsure of where he is in life. Swans being described as mysterious adds to the semantic field of mysticism, further emphasized through its placement between 2 caesuras. The swans build their nests upon rushes, implying that they will continue producing life, therefore continuing the cycle of nature. Yeats envies them for this, as he was not able to continue the cycle of life with the woman he desired to do so with this of course being Maud Gonne. Yeats is approaching the end of his life, and once he does, he may metaphorically fly away, along with the rest of the swans. The bells, religion, and passage of time all relate to his coming demise. In flying away with the swans, he fills the gap of the 60th swan, therefore finding a partner and also restoring the balance of the perfect nature. This is another allusion to his sorrow of not being able to be together with the one he truly loved. The perfection of nature is further observed within the white color of the swans, which in a Christian context represent purity, as Yeats was a Christian man. Yeats' mentioned awakening may be a further allusion to his current period of transition, from an adult to an elderly man. The flying away of the swans may be a representation of this phenomenon, as his adult life is flying away from him, or he is flying away from his adult life. This is something which most likely causes Yeats much pain, as to him it may be the last remnant of his connection to his past lost love. Once again, the swans are given an admirative description, another motif. Yeats seems to go out of his way to continually compliment the swans, which means one of two things. Either he has a thing for swans, or the swans carry a greater significance, namely representing an aspect of life which was very dear to him. The latter seems more probable. Yeats questions if the swans will fly away at all in the last line of the poem. This may hint at his hope that the swans will not fly away, therefore meaning that his past may not leave him. He is either hoping for their departure, therefore meaning a loss of his memory of his past, therefore meaning he is finally able to move on. Alternatively, he fears that his past memories leaving him means him forgetting about his passion for his younger self, as well as his past lovers. Perhaps he wants to hold on to some aspect of his former self, while also longing to rid himself of others.
To conclude, Yeats, like all of us, had to accept his own mortality. In his poem, The Wild Swans at Coole, we can see him reflecting on his past in order to come to terms with his growing age. He compares how time has changed him with how time hasn't affected nature and the swans. The swans kept their beauty and vitality, whereas Yeats has lost his youth. There's a sort of bittersweet melancholy throughout the poem, induced by this sense of loss. This loss also includes the unrequited love Yeats had for Maud Gonne, as well as the victims of World War I. Did Yeats truly manage to come to terms with his mortality? One can't know. However, one thing's for certain. There are still wild swans swimming at Coole today.
The yearning for a lost love is a common theme among the studied text, those being Othello, Pride and Prejudice, and Testament of Youth. As well as the emotional torment it causes to individuals such as Yeats, alludes to its power. The semantics and somber tones created by the time period of the First World War are also observable within Testament of Youth, where pathetic fallacy is used to great extent to convey these sentiments. The motif of the temporary nature of humans may also be observed within Testament of Youth, specifically the temporary human relationships. Many of Vera's relationships are similarly temporary to the way Yeats feels about his own life, and this of course leads her to great heartache, which is similar to the nature of Yeats. Vera also dreads the passage of time. Her ever-fading memories of her friends and Roland, as well as Edward, seem to be something she wishes to hold on to. This bittersweet process gives her the opportunity to move on and achieve greater things. However, it also means that she will most likely forget about those she held dear, once again similar to what Yeats is going through. Themes of regret, when approaching the end of one's life, are also present within Othello. After Othello realizes his lapse in judgment, especially when considering the love Yeats lost over the years. Similar regret in Pride and Prejudice, as Elizabeth feels towards Darcy. However, this story ends well, and Yeats's does not.
Hey everybody, we hope you enjoyed our video. We had so much fun filming this together and editing it all, not to mention all the analysis and research that went into this. This project really helped our understanding of Yeats' literature and character. So once again, thank you for watching, we hope you enjoyed, and now, if you like, you can pause the video to have a look at our sources.